I'm pressing it now. So it's recording for me, and it'll be recording for you as well. Yeah. So I'll introduce Kim. Kim is a speaker, an author, and a coach. So she has two award-winning books. The titles are Secrets to Happy Couples, which might interest a lot of people, and Choosing Me Now. And her other books are A Choice Theory Guide to Relationships and Leveraging Diversity at Work. So Kim has a background in counselling. She did work for 5 years in a community residential program with people labelled with schizophrenia. And she worked for 17 years in a specialised foster care agency. She now has her own business, Coaching for Excellence, and she moved from rural Pennsylvania and is now living in Chicago. From 2010 to 2020, she was executive director for WGI, William Glasser Institute US, and currently since 2013, she's the executive director for WGI International. So it's wonderful to have you on board today, and that you were able to drag yourself away from your other commitments and make yourself available for this presentation. So we're really looking forward to it. I hope everyone really enjoys it. Okay, over to you, Kim.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. It is truly an honor to be here. Ireland was my first international speaking engagement back in 2010. So I have a very warm place for Ireland. Okay. So I wanted to talk with you about mental freedom. I see it as I had heard about, I had heard about Jane Fonda dividing our lifespan into thirds. And my first third, of course, was my younger years, growing up, raising a family, being married. Then my middle third of my life was working and kind of finding my way. And now I had my 60th birthday in October. And so now, of course, I'm planning to live past 90, but I do see this as my final third of my life. And so what I think is mental freedom for me is defining that final third. And mental freedom is built on a very strong foundation of choice theory, as those of you who are familiar with choice theory will understand. But I put mental freedom together to help mainly women. And what I found in my coaching practice was that I was attracting professional women who looked like they had everything together. You know who they are. There's probably many of you in my room right now listening to me. They're professional. They have all the answers. They do everything right. People come to them for help. But I found that the people who are coming to me for coaching had something that was problematic for them. It was either a relationship that wasn't working in their life or a situation they couldn't control. And it was a difficult thing for them. And they didn't tell anybody because, they were the ones that were supposed to be in control and everybody came to them. So this is like a secret that they're suffering with in silence. So that's who I wrote this program for. And it's for the people who are really ready to find the answer. They're tired of waiting for others to change so they can be happy. They're ready to empower themselves to create their own happiness. And they're ready to face their fears and do whatever it takes to get them there. So that's who I built Mental Freedom for. It is not for people, and I also know plenty of people who fit these categories, people who continue to blame others for their unhappiness, people who aren't willing to really take that hard look in the mirror and see what are they doing to contribute to this situation that is causing them so much pain. People who aren't willing to invest the time and energy into making the changes that they want to make. I don't know why my slides are advancing on their own, but they are. I feel like I have a ghost, but I'll try to keep it straight. And then those who are getting what they need from being a victim. And there are lots of people who really take on that victim role. And there's a lot of benefit and payoff to being a victim. It's painful, but there's still benefit, and they don't know that there's benefit in giving that up. And so they cling to it and hold on to it because it's the only thing that they found that gets them even just a little bit of what they want. So mental freedom really isn't for them yet. One of the things I like to say is people aren't ready to change until the pain of staying the same exceeds their fear of change. So I have learned over the years that there are some people who really need to sit in their pain before they're ready to make the change. So I don't feel terrible anymore when people aren't ready to change, because I know that part of getting ready is feeling more pain. If you try to fix it too soon, it's not going to be a lasting change for them. And how do I know that? Because I am that person who has to sit in the pain. I know all about it. I sometimes stay in relationships way too long. I know the relationship isn't right. I stick with it because I'm not in enough pain yet. It's crazy. But everything that I put in mental freedom came from personal experience. I feel like I have been so blessed to have had some serious, challenging events in my life that caused me to lean into choice theory in a way that I think some people never are challenged to do. While I think everybody has stories, everybody has a story, everybody has examples of how they use choice theory in their life. I felt for about 10 years, I kept getting hit over the head with challenges. So, of course, it started, many of you know, it started in 1995 when my husband was diagnosed with leukemia. And then in 1999, when he passed away from that. And then I was a single parent raising two very strong willed, testosterone driven teenage boys, which was really challenging. And then that baby boy of mine decided he wanted to play army and go fight in Iraq. And I had to live through that. He lived through it just fine. I barely survived it. And then I thought I was good. And then it happened again. He had to go back. And then I moved to Chicago, built my own business. I got involved in a relationship with a wonderful man that I loved very, very much. And it just didn't work out between us, and I had to end that relationship, and that was very painful. So I had all of those experiences that helped me to develop what I put together that I'm calling mental freedom. I do it in 6 sessions, and there's 2 sessions for each section. So it's a BCT framework, and BCT stands for build, change, and transform. And there's 2 steps under each. But the way that I look at that, the building part is about relationships. You're building healthy, respectful, and trusting relationships the right way. I'll talk about that in a minute. So that part is about opening your heart. The change part is about changing the narrative that's in your head. We have these stories that we tell ourselves, and we do this monologue in our head almost all day long. And the horrible thing is that monologue is almost always one that brings us down instead of builds us up. So we need to change our narrative. And that is about freeing our minds. And the last pillar is called transform, because we're going to learn about our emotions, and we're going to transform those emotions from painful to neutral, and maybe even pleasurable. And I'll teach how to do that in just a minute. And that I call, in the program, it's transforming your emotions, but it really is about transforming your life. So my tagline for mental freedom is open your heart, free your mind, transform your life. So let's look at each step. There's 6 steps, 2 with each one of those pillars. So building responsible, trusting relationships the right way. Do you know that this is where we don't take responsibility for the things we do, and we often take on responsibility for things that someone else did. So trying to learn the difference there, and learning to trust people to be who they are, as opposed to who we want them to be. We often in relationships trust a person to be who we see them to be in our quality worlds, and always fall short because those quality world pictures are perfect. And the people in our lives, well, they might be close to perfect, but they don't ever match that perfection of quality world picture. And then we tend to try to mold people into who we want them to be instead of supporting and encouraging who they are, which is, of course, the choice theory piece of giving up those destructive relationship habits that we try to use on people to get them to match the picture in our heads instead of taking what we see in front of us and supporting and encouraging that person. So most people won't do this because it requires work. It's not easy, but I like to say it's a lot easier than what they've been doing up to that point, which is bashing their head against the wall, trying to make other people change or control things that they can't. It takes time. And some people are tied to being responsible for other people. I see this a lot with parents and adult children. They just want to take responsibility for that person. We take responsibility for our spouses. It's not healthy, and we don't need to do that. So the second one about changing your narrative, it's about that story in your head and how the story doesn't serve you. And the realization that because you are the author of that story, you're writing it, you get to edit or delete it whenever you want, but you have to step into that ownership of the author of your story. It doesn't just happen to you. You're writing it. So for goodness sakes, let's rip that story out and change it. And most people won't do this because it's more comfortable to stay with what they know. It takes time and patience. I call it the practice of mental freedom. It's not something you learn, it's something you practice, like yoga or mindfulness. It's something you need to practice daily. It's also much easier and feels much more rewarding to blame others for your problems than to take control of them for yourself. And most people don't even believe it's possible. You tell people they can change their narrative and they don't believe that they can because it's lived with them for so long. Transforming your emotions. Psychology would have us believing that our emotions just happen to us because of outside events, and that's just not true, right? We know that in choice theory. They serve a very useful purpose, our emotions. For those of you here that are familiar with the chart, it's that little colored arrow that comes from the scales that goes back into the perception that says, what does it say? Involuntary behavior, very brief. It's usually felt as an emotion or a body sensation, a physiology. And that's really important for us to pay attention to. Those are very useful. But then we choose emotions. Often it's not a conscious choice, but we choose emotions as our best attempt to get what we want. And when we come to understand that, we usually want to learn how to transform those emotions because it's not what really serves us. But again, most people won't do that because they think they're right and the other person's wrong. They don't want to do the work. They'd rather take a pill. They don't want to admit they've held the key to their freedom the whole time. It's like they've built this prison, a mental prison around themselves, and they're pushing against the door, trying to get out, trying to get out. And they didn't realize the key to that door was right in the palm of their hands the whole time. They might think it's too expensive or they don't have time to do it. So let's look at each step individually. The first one is the difference between responsibility and responsibility. I first learned this in Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And what we need to take responsibility for is everything that we do. If you did it, you're responsible for it. Whether or not you intended whatever happened, you're still responsible for it. So we need to take responsibility for what we do. We also need to take responsibility for ourselves in terms of it's my job, no one else's, to make sure that my needs are balanced. Okay. That's my job. It's not my job to take responsibility for other people. And people do that. I think of the women who were abused in the Me Too movement, or people who are in an abusive relationship, or children who were molested by their parents as young children often take responsibility. They think it's their fault that it happened. So we need to learn to put responsibility where it belongs and separate ourselves from that responsibility. There's another piece in here that we often forget, to take responsibility for the good things that we do because of modesty, and we're not supposed to brag. We don't take responsibility for our wins and our successes and the ways in which we help people. The thing to remember is that even if something happens that is challenging and you're not responsible for it, you are always responsible. That means there is always a response you can make. Sometimes we make responses that make the situation worse. Sometimes we make responses that help. Sometimes we make responses that don't seem to affect the situation at all. And sometimes we choose not to respond. But once we make that choice, we're 100% responsible for it. So I don't know why that happened. Okay. So we need to know that we have to take responsibility for what we choose to be or not be responsible for. So now I want to move to the unconditional trust challenge and tell you that this was a painful experience that I had to learn. I'll give you the shortened version because I only have 30 minutes to speak here. But the shortened version is that I had a friend come into town, and some of you may have heard me talk about in the opening session, my friend who needed a kidney. And if you didn't hear it, the best news ever is he got his kidney on St. Patrick's Day. So the luck of the Irish is with him, and I'm very happy about that. But a friend of our mutual friend came into town to visit my sick friend, and that person was going to be staying with me because he wanted to surprise my friend. So I picked him up at the airport, brought him back to my house. We had a nice evening together while we waited to have lunch with my sick friend the next day. And we went to see my friend. And my expectation for that weekend was that the three of us would spend a lot of great time together because we were all friends. And it seemed like the right thing for us to expect to do. And so I cleared my entire schedule for the weekend, which is a pretty phenomenal feat. I don't usually have an entire weekend with nothing planned. And after that lunch date that the three of us had, I never saw them again for the whole weekend until my friend went back to the airport, because they were doing what they needed to do for themselves. And I just wasn't part of it. And I was hurt. And for the whole weekend, I'm going to confess, this was about 3.5 years ago, I was feeling sorry for myself for a whole 3 days. And I said, okay, Kim, this is ridiculous. You have to learn something from this. This is crazy. And I know how in choice theory we say everybody's doing the best they can at any moment in time. And while I believe that, I add a little bit of something to that that I think makes it even more true. I think that everybody's doing the best they can to get what they want at any point in time. And I don't always think that what they want is necessarily the best. And they do know they could want something better, but they're stuck with wanting what they want in that moment. So they act in the way that's best for them in that moment to get what they wanted. So my friends, they were getting exactly what they wanted. They wanted time together. And it didn't include me. I was not getting what I wanted because I wanted time with them and they weren't obliging me. So what I decided was I need to start using this thing I call the unconditional trust challenge. And once I started to use it, and I invite anyone that listens to this to take that challenge as well. The unconditional trust challenge is about trusting every single person, whether you know them or you don't, to in any moment in time, do the best they know to get what they want. That doesn't mean that what they want lines up with what you want them to want. However, if you care about them, if you love them, isn't that what you want for them to get what they want in that moment? And so you can be happy for them. Now, will it hurt you? Will it cause you to feel bad? Will you not like it? All of that can happen. I hate to tell you, all of that can happen. And when it does, you have to go back to responsibility, because now that they've shown you who they are, you need to trust that they are going to be that person. And so you're responsible now to decide, now that I see who you are and I'm going to trust you to be this person, I need to take responsibility for my part of our relationship and decide, do I want to stay all in with you? Do I need to pull myself back a little? Do I need to create some boundaries? Do I need to decide to love you from afar? Do I need to completely end the relationship? That is your responsibility. But stop trying to trust people to be who you want them to be. Stop having expectations that other people are not going to meet. I love this quote by a man named Kyle Cease. He said, "No one has ever broken your heart. They've broken your expectations." And the thing I love about that is that who forms your expectations? You do. So nobody's broken your heart. You've broken your own darn heart, and you don't ever have to do it again now that you know you can change that. So the third one, we're moving now into freeing your mind and your narrative, right? All day long, we tell ourselves we have to do things we don't want to do. I need to tell you, I see that there's people having questions, and I'm going to wait until the end and answer questions because I can't see them while I have this screen share going on. So I apologize. If it's something important, you can just jump in and speak my name and I'll shut up, but I can't see who has what to say. So if you need something, let me know. But if you think about how many times in a day you tell yourself you have to do something that you really don't want to do, feel the weight of that. It's heavy. It feels like you're just being forced, coerced, you're forcing yourself. It's external control at its worst. So I try to coach people to get under that have to. If you have a have to right now in your life, I want you to remind yourself there's really only one thing we have to do. And the one thing we have to do is one day, eventually, we're going to die. I mean, I don't know anybody that lives through this thing called life. And that's one have to, I don't know how to change. It used to be an expression. I don't know if you say it in Ireland, but in the US, we say two things are certain: death and taxes. But I know a lot of people who don't pay their taxes and they're still walking around. They're not in jail. So we don't even have to do that. And as long as you're willing to accept the consequences that come with not doing the have to, there's nothing you have to do. So I would propose that if you're doing it, it's because you want to. It's not just because you're willing to do it, I'm choosing to do it. It's more than that. You actually want to. So you have to take the time and do the work to find out what's underneath that have to. Why are you doing it? There's a reason. That have to is actually a want to, because it gives you something that you want. So if you say, I have to go to work, I don't really want to go to work, that's not true. You're going to work because you want to maintain your lifestyle. You want to be able to pay your bills. You want to be able to support your children. So when you get up and think about, I'm miserable, I have to go to work, you can stop that immediately and say, no, that's not true. I want to go to work because I want to pay my bills. I want to have a home. I want my car. I want my children to have the things that they need. So get rid of those have tos in your life and rewrite it into a want. The fourth one is about changing your story. I don't know why I have an echo. The fourth one is about changing your story. And this is because our brains are hardwired for negativity. We know this from neurology. It's a survival need tactic to have our brains attuned to what's wrong. Because in prehistoric times, you needed to know what was wrong to save yourself from the saber-toothed tiger or from whatever was going to kill you. But in today's world, fortunately, most of us do not have a saber-toothed tiger chasing us down. We're not in life-threatening situations. So we can learn to wire a new pathway. It doesn't do away with the old pathway, right? That old pathway, hardwired for negativity, is still there. So when the saber-toothed tiger is upon you, you'll be able to notice. But for everyday purposes, you want to notice what's right instead of what's wrong. And so understanding your story and being able to turn it into something positive will really help you free your mind. So first you have to recognize what your story is, and then you need to decide what different story you could write. I'll give you a simple example because it's very common and we all have done this. Did you ever walk into a room where people were talking and the minute they notice you, they stop talking? Everybody's had that experience. And we all know the story. The story, I don't even have to ask you. I know the story. The story is, oh my gosh, they're talking about me. And we become super self-conscious and we feel like we've just intruded. A neutral story, you could say instead, is, I must have interrupted a personal story that I don't know anything about. That's not hurtful and it doesn't feel good. If you want to feel good, you could tell yourself, they must be planning a big surprise for me. I wonder what they're going to do. And you could tell yourself that story, but be careful you don't attach expectations to that, okay? Because then we're back to number 2. But you can tell yourself whatever story you want. And I used to say this, people used to laugh at me. You're making it up anyway. Why not make up a story that helps you feel better? And people will laugh and they think it's a joke. It's not a joke. Really, make up your story and make it be one that serves you. Now we're moving into the emotion part, understanding and transforming your emotions, but it's the transform your life part. So I already alluded to the 2 purposes of emotions. The first one is that signal that we get from the scales to the perception that tells you I'm either getting what I want or I'm not getting what I want. And that's usually felt like when you're getting what you want, it feels like, ah. And when you're not getting what you want, it feels like, ugh, like a kick in the gut. And you feel that and you know that, and that's supposed to get your attention and tell you either relax into this and soak it up and absorb every moment because it's glorious, or you're in trouble here. You don't have what you want. You better figure out a better way to get it. What happens sometimes is we've become numb to those emotions. We don't always pay attention to them. So we can hurt ourselves by not paying attention. The next thing about emotions is when we move from our scales to the behavioral system, that creative system where we look at our options and we decide what we want to do and act out in our behavioral car, a lot of times that darn behavioral system will present us with an option of a painful emotion to use to get what you want. And I believe that most of the people that I'm working with in my coaching, once they recognize that, they want to stop. They realize they have patterns of behavior, they have habits of being sad so other people will help them, being sad so they can get attention, being sad so they can be free from some responsibility. So sometimes that sadness might help us in the immediate moment, but it doesn't help us in the long term, because all of you who know a sad sack, we all have them in our life, people who just can't get out of their own way of sadness. In the beginning, you pour a lot of your energy and attention into them trying to help them. But if that lasts for years, you probably have already started to distance yourself from them because you feel completely ineffectual when you're trying to help somebody who's sad and they're not changing. They're not experiencing the help that you're trying to pour into them. So in the short term, it might help, but in the long term, when it comes to relationships, it doesn't help. When I'm talking with men, and I don't mean to be stereotypical here, but I think it's because of our socialization. I don't think it's because of our chromosomes or our hormones or anything. But when I talk to men, men seem to embrace the behavior of anger more. Women are sad, men are angry. And both of us equally can have anxiety, although I think more women have anxiety than men, because men, it's not masculine or cool to be anxious or fearful, so they cover that over with anger. So whatever that painful emotion is, we have anxiety, um, anger, and sadness, and all of the continuum that brings, right? Those are the three major painful emotions. You get to decide if you don't want to be experiencing that emotion anymore. There are things you can do and things you can think to transform that emotion from negative to neutral, or negative even to positive. So I want to show you the last step, which is, I like to leave with this because this is a true gift, and it comes from my heart to your heart. And if you embrace this, I really believe that you can make short order of those painful emotions. I can't tell you you'll never feel them again, because of course we're going to have things that create anger, sadness, anxiety in us, of course. But with the glow, you will be able to transform that easily. So when my husband was dying, I learned that I realized, Jimmy, I have 4 minutes left, even though I didn't see you because I can't see you when I'm showing my PowerPoint. But um, the perfect, I learned this reading a book by John DeMartini called The Breakthrough Experience. And he spoke about the periodic table of elements of all things. And he said that in the periodic table of elements, every element in our naturally occurring world has equal positive and negative attached. They have the same number of protons as they do electrons. So they're perfectly balanced with positive and negative. And he suggested that our experiences in life had that same balance. But if we go back to being hardwired for negativity, right? We aren't looking at the positive side of our experiences. We tend to focus on the negative. I try to think of that as two sides of one coin, right? You have a coin, you can look at the head side or you could look at the tail side. Our brains and the hardwiring in them are telling us to look at the painful side. And that's why we experience all those painful emotions. When my husband was dying, I'm not going to lie, it was excruciatingly painful. So after I read this book, I decided to turn that over and see if there was anything I could find on the other side. And my scales were maybe this much out of balance. And in that moment when I looked, I found a little bit of something that brought it a little closer to balance, that little bit of something. And I felt wrong doing it, right? Try asking the question, what could be good about my husband dying? I mean, that's a horrible question. I hope none of you ever have to ask that question. But I knew I had 2 children I had to help through the experience. So I felt I owed it to them to ask that question. And I did. And I found 2 things. We were going to have the opportunity to say goodbye, and not everybody gets that. So I knew our relationships would be in order. We wouldn't have the last word spoken in anger. It wouldn't be that, hey, could you pick up a bottle of milk at the corner store on your way home from work? It wasn't going to be that. I knew that. And also, my husband was quite a bit of a workaholic. He was a mechanic, and there was always cars that needed to be repaired. When he got his leukemia, he learned that the chemical benzene that's found in car engines was considered a potential cause for his type of leukemia. So he stopped working before he was too sick that he had to stop. And he had 4.5 years, really 4 years, of being so involved in our children's lives. He was their soccer coach, their wrestling coach. He coached them in baseball. He took them to hunt and fish and work on cars. And we took a family vacation to Disney World. And I can tell you that if my husband had been healthy and lived to be 100, those things would not have happened. And I could sit here for hours and tell you all of the benefits that also came after that. I could tell you right now, I would not be the executive director of the Glasser Institute. I would not be talking to you here in Ireland. I would not have had the life I've had where I've been able to travel around the world speaking to people. It's just been a beautiful, beautiful life. And that doesn't mean that I wouldn't trade it all to have my husband back. I would. However, we don't get to pick those things. So all we can do is be responsible and make the best of it that we can. So the glow for me stands for gifts, lessons, opportunities, and wisdom. So when you're in a painful situation, take a step back. And everybody has the ability to do this as hindsight, but I'm not talking about hindsight because it takes us a long time to get to hindsight and a lot of pain in between. I'm talking about almost in the moment you experience the pain, ask yourself the question, what are the gifts, lessons, opportunities, and wisdom I can get from this situation? Those of you who followed me on Facebook when I had my hot air balloon accident and I had my 2 broken ankles, the very first thing I thought of when we landed, and I knew my ankles were broken. I mean, there was no question about it. They were badly broken. I said, well, Kim, now you get a chance to practice what you preach. That was the opportunity. And so it's not overnight that you'll have the ability to do this. Like I said, it has to be a daily practice. And when you practice, you strengthen that connection in your brain and you will form a new wiring that you'll be able to go there much quicker. And that's mental freedom. That's what I had that I wanted to give to you. And I'm 1 minute over, so I apologize. I'm happy to take any questions, and I will stop sharing my screen so I can see you. And if you have questions, I'm happy to hear it. I just made gallery view, Jimmy, for myself. Maybe I changed it for everybody. I don't know.
I think I see one hand up. I'm not sure if that's on purpose or by accident. There's no name on it, so I can't call the person by name. And I think it's by accident. Okay. If anyone has a question.
No questions. I felt like I was talking like an auctioneer to try to fit everything in really fast. I hope I didn't overwhelm people. I thought there must be questions. I have a question. Oh, Gertie, yes. You're on mute. You're on mute. There you go.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you. I wonder if your volume on your computer is down, or maybe you could put your question in the chat.
Yeah.
I have a quick question while I'm waiting for Gertie. Is that my Tahani that just sent that message? I have a Tahani in Kuwait. I'm wondering if that's her. I haven't talked to her, seen her in years.
Yeah. Yeah, people are just comments, great presentation and really enjoyed it. I think people are reflecting on what you said because it was so powerful.
Gertie, I see you. I can't hear you. You're muted.
No. We can't hear you, Gertie.
Could you type it in the chat, perhaps? At the bottom of your screen, there's a chat button. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't hear.
Yeah. When do I say now? Is there any other? Lots of food for thought. Great presentation, Kim. Yeah. Let's see now. Photo of the wolves on the wall. Great.
I'm glad you're gonna take the glow with you. Thank you. That is truly my gift to you. I hope you love that.
Fabulous presentation. Love it. Oh yeah. Oh, you can see it as well. Yeah. Yeah. What's the name?
Oh, I don't have the book yet. I'm writing it though. I will have the book, and it will be called Mental Freedom. Right now it's a program, and there's going to be an online course first. I'm gonna have a a training for it for people who want to use it. There'll be a training for people who want to use that. And I've been doing some group coaching around it I've had 3 cohort groups so far who have gone through it, and they've all been choice theory people. Some have been choice theory instructors and choice theory certified people. And I thought I would have nothing new to teach them, but I think it's just the way, the way that it's put together and some little additional things that I've included that has helped people get a lot of benefit from it. So I feel like it's going to really help people, especially coming out of this pandemic. I think people are struggling with their mental health. And this is such to take a page out of Glasser's book for sure. I mean, I wouldn't have any of this without Bill Glasser. We all know that. I feel that we need to focus on the humanity and what connects us, and not on the diagnoses and the things that make people sick and unhappy. They are mentally stressed like all of us. Everyone has been mentally stressed, and many have some more distress than others because of this pandemic. And I really believe that mental freedom is something, as choice theory is as well, that can help people who are really ready to step into that space where they're going to take control and they are going to do the things that they need to do to develop this daily practice and get stronger with it over time.
If you haven't already written here in the chat, perhaps you might just do it now. And I see Boba's hand going up. I think Boba has a question there.
Yeah, I believe, Kim, then when you are going to write the book, you will also put some explanation why people believe that they are not mentally free, or that they don't have mental freedom. So I a little bit miss it, and I believe that in the base is external control psychology beliefs.
Absolutely.
We do not believe that we are the main characters in the movie of our life. So people generally believe that they are victims of circumstances and other people behavior. They can change what they cannot change. So that's the reason that one cannot find the glow. You cannot find the glow if you believe that you are a victim. So pain is pain. We understand it. We cannot stop us in frustration to feel the pain, but it's not necessary to nurturing frustration, to nurturing pain. So I wish you will explain.
In the book, I will. I only had 30 minutes, Boba.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll reference your book, and I'll have you in my credits on mental freedom for sure. Boba wrote an excellent book about external control beliefs. So I would recommend that to anyone who hasn't already picked that up.
It's about reality therapy, actually.
It is. It's beautiful.
Any other question before we have about 2 minutes left? Or comment?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for hanging in there with me. I tried to cover a lot of things in a short period of time, so I hope it was useful and helpful. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a powerful presentation, and your personal sharing and your examples made it very, very clear to me anyway, what you were talking about. I think you left people dwelling on it and reflecting on it and thinking about it. I think people will take a lot away from that, your thoughts and so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Good.
Kim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kim.
I'm going
Thanks.
to stop the recording now, and you can stop yours as well.